Okay, everybody, I am back with chapter 2 in my book, The Sum of Us by Heather McGhee, What Racism Costs Everyone and How We Can Prosper Together. Man, Heather has a lot of good things to say. This chapter is entitled How Racism Drained the Pool. Now, I gotta tell you, I recorded this once before and it was 40 minutes long. I've tried to condense it down and I'm probably going to talk awful fast, and I am actually going to split this into 2 parts because I want to dive a little deeper into the second part of this chapter, the end, because I think it is so incredibly important for what is happening in our political system right now. So let's just start. In relation to education, infrastructure, and standard of living, this is a quote directly from the book. When it comes to per capita government spending, the United States is near the bottom of the list of industrialized countries, below Latvia and Estonia. So remember, we're thinking specifically about our investment in our country, our people, and we are near the bottom of industrialized countries. So my big question to start with is, if we're supposed to be one of the richest countries in the world, then why are we not investing in ourselves? So pause, think about it, because this is an important question. To really answer this question, we're going to go all the way back to slavery in our country. And slave states always had less than the states in the North. This was across the board when it comes to libraries, less investment in education, less investment in infrastructure, okay? So, quote from the book, the slave economy was a system that created high concentrations of wealth, land, and political power, and the owners didn't need more than a handful of white workers per plantation, and they didn't need an educated populace. Whatever, black or white, such a thing was in fact counter to their financial interests. Okay, this is super important because we're talking about the fact that in the South specifically, the slave economy created such high concentrations in such a small group of people, and they don't need the people underneath them to be educated. Why don't they need the people underneath them to be educated? Think about that. Pause it. Think about it. This is happening in our system right now, okay? We're talking about the silencing of opposition in the media, taking away financial support for colleges, loan forgiveness on education. It's happening right now because we don't want our populace to be educated. We don't want our populace to ask questions. We don't want people to be curious because it's hard to take advantage of people that are trying to learn and trying to, better themselves. So an educated populace might be able to stand up to tyranny, see patterns of injustice. My question to you is, if slaves have been given even the right to learn how to read, if you don't know that, that's important. Slaves were not allowed to read or learn. If they had been given even the right to learn how to read, would things have been any different? All right, because of everything that was happening in the South specifically, but that amassing of wealth and the refusal to invest in the public goods, for example, education and infrastructure, was actually making poor white folks poorer as well. So that wasn't really necessarily the point in the policies. So after programs in the late 1800s and early 1900s began to build up a larger white middle class, because like we said, that wasn't necessarily the point to hold white people down, right? It's blatantly obvious that the point is to hold black people and minorities down. So it wasn't the point to hold white people down. So we, as a country, developed all of these programs that helped build that white middle class, like the Homestead Act of 1862, which pretty much gave land west of the Mississippi to anybody, including immigrants, if you were a white presenting immigrant. Okay, you just got some land, okay, that was stolen from the indigenous people, but you got that land. Okay, the government began to insure mortgages during the Great Depression, but anybody who knows anything about it knows redlining, where they drew red lines around parts of the map that were black neighborhoods, and they said those were no lending zones. So people are getting all of this help building their portfolio with property, one of the best things we can do, right? But not Black folks, because they lived in redlined areas. And you think, okay, well, don't buy in redlined areas. You couldn't. If you were Black, you couldn't move out of your redlined areas because we had no Black clauses in different properties, okay? Let's see. The GI Bill of 1944 paid college tuition for veterans, but Black men were typically funneled into vocational schools, so they didn't get all the benefits. Suburbs were created with white-only clauses, so there you go. Social Security gave income to millions of elderly Americans, but the exclusion of job categories left many Black Americans out. So it's hard to live without understanding that these policies were created to exclude Black people from gaining the wealth that would help them be a healthy part of the middle class of America. So then we have where the title of the chapter comes from. The pools. In the 20s and 30s, the cities around the country are building pools, and they're basically like trying to outdo each other in these nice pools that are public goods. Everybody gets to come for free. Okay, we don't know that anymore. If I want to go swim in a pool somewhere, I have to pay either a daily fee or I have to have a membership there. Even if I want to go and swim at the Y, right? There's a great Y down in South City that has an outdoor pool, and it's awesome, but you have to, even as a Y member, pay extra to swim in that pool. So we don't know what it's like to have a free pool anymore, right? So they're outdoing each other with these pools, and it's just this commitment to like, we are going to help the people in our city prosper, and we are going to invest in our city unless you were Black, because Black people didn't get to use these pools. So Black people are essentially paying taxes. Pools are being built with their tax money, and they are not allowed to use the pools. Okay, so in the 1950s, the fight to integrate these pools is underway, right? So the NAACP took on cases. They're trying to integrate the pools. They're showing that this is unconstitutional, everything, right? So these pools slowly become integrated, right? What ends up happening is riots, intimidation, and in some cases, Black people being killed and seriously injured, all because white people don't want to swim in pools with people that don't look like them. Pools around the country are either drained or privatized because of this, because they can't get around the fact that this is, like, it is clearly wrong. You are providing a public good to not the entire public. So it's wrong. So they decide they're going to drain their pools, or they're going to privatize their pools. So what does privatizing a pool really look like? So what would end up happening is a city would either sell or transfer their, in this case, pool or public good to a private organization, and we're just going to call it a club, okay? Because that's just like a nice way to get the point across. Okay, they would say they were doing it for safety or help to maintain the pool because the city could no longer do that. They would make up some excuse for why it was happening, and then this club would sell memberships, which would essentially price out Black people and poor white folks. And if somehow a Black person was able to amass enough wealth to try to join this club that had a pool or whatever else good, they would all of a sudden have a voting system. Oh, okay, which somehow miraculously never decided to accept Black folks. All of these actions come out of the fact that people in power see specifically Black people as undeserving, and they refuse to allow them to take part in public goods. This action also took poor whites down as well. In the 60s, Black people and women decided that they were going to protest their position in society and their lack of resources and representation in government. And this creates a huge problem for the white upper class, specifically men, but women too. What are we going to do with all of these people that all of a sudden have the wherewithal to demand what is owed to them? And that's where we get some fun little facts about Ronald Reagan and Lee Atwater. And that's what you're going to see in part 2.